I proved we're living in a simulation. The admins noticed, now they're coming. I found the proof at 2 in the morning on a Thursday, buried in a dataset that I was analyzing for my PhD thesis on quantum decoherence patterns. The data showed something that should have been impossible, a repeating structure in the background noise of quantum measurements, a pattern so deeply embedded that no one had noticed it because no one had thought to look for it at that particular scale. The pattern was a grid, not metaphorically. An actual geometric grid, a lattice structure underlying the quantum foam that looked exactly like what you would see if you zoomed into the mesh of a three-dimensional rendering engine. I stared at the data for 4 hours, running every verification test I knew, looking for the error in my methodology that would make the grid disappear. The error wasn't there. The grid was real. It was not a natural phenomenon. Natural phenomena do not arrange themselves in perfect geometric lattices with consistent spacing across every measurement point. This was architecture. This was infrastructure. This was the scaffolding of a constructed reality, and I was looking at it from the inside. I should have kept quiet. Instead, I did what any excited graduate student would do. I told my advisor. Dr. Chen looked at my data, went very pale, and asked me to leave his office. The next morning, my lab access was revoked. Dr. Chen would not return my calls. My thesis advisor was replaced by a woman I had never met who told me my research direction was being redirected to a less sensitive area. I was not paranoid enough to interpret this correctly. I thought it was academic politics. Then the first glitch happened. I was walking across campus when reality stuttered. There is no better word for it. For approximately 1/3 of a second the world froze, not me, the world. Every leaf, every bird, every other person on the pathway stopped moving simultaneously as if someone had pressed pause on everything except my consciousness. Then it resumed. No one else noticed, I checked. I asked the person walking next to me if they had felt anything. They looked at me like I was having a breakdown. I might have been, but the trees in front of me had changed position. Not much, 3 centimeters to the left. The world had stuttered and the rendering had not loaded back in exactly the same configuration. Glitches increased in frequency. Once a day, then twice, then constantly. Micro-stutters in the fabric of reality that only I could perceive. Objects shifting position by millimeters. Shadows falling at angles that didn't match the light source. People repeating the exact same sentence twice in conversations without noticing. And then the watchers appeared. They looked like ordinary people. They stood at the edges of spaces I occupied, on street corners, in the back of lecture halls, at tables in cafes. They never approached, they never spoke. But they watched me with an attention that was too focused, too consistent, too perfectly directed to be casual. They were monitoring me, not like government surveillance, like system administrators monitoring a process that had started behaving unexpectedly. I realized with a sick certainty that my discovery of the grid had triggered something, a flag in the system. An alert that a simulated consciousness had become aware of the simulation itself, and the simulation's management infrastructure was responding to the anomaly the way any well-designed system responds to errors. It was investigating, and I suspected that after investigation came correction. I tried to publish my findings online. Every upload failed, not with error messages or blocked connections, but with results that were subtly wrong. The files would upload successfully, but the content would be different when I checked. My grid data replaced with normal noise patterns. My written analysis edited to remove every reference to the lattice structure. The simulation was not preventing me from communicating. It was altering my communications after I made them, correcting the output to remove the dangerous information while leaving me with the impression that the transmission had been successful. I only discovered this because I printed a physical copy and compared it to the online version line by line. The printed version was correct. The digital version had been rewritten. The simulation could control digital information. It could not control ink on paper. This was the vulnerability. I began writing everything by hand. I left physical notes in public places. I mailed letters to journalists and scientists and anyone I thought might listen. And then something extraordinary happened. I received a physical letter in return. It was not from a journalist. It was from the simulation itself, printed on paper because that was the only medium I trusted, and it contained 3 sentences that changed everything I thought I understood about my situation. The letter read, "We know you can see the grid. The grid was not meant to be hidden. You were not meant to look. The 3 sentences were printed in a font that did not exist in any typography database I could find, perfectly formed characters that looked like they had been designed by something that understood the concept of letters but had never seen a human use them. Below the 3 sentences was a fourth line, smaller, almost an afterthought. The watchers are not here to correct you. They are here to see if you are ready. I read the letter 40 times. The simulation was not trying to silence me. The altered uploads, the revoked access, the monitoring, none of it was suppression. It was a test. The simulation wanted to know how I would react to the discovery, whether I would panic, whether I would try to break things, whether I would be capable of holding the knowledge without being destroyed by it. The watchers were not administrators preparing to delete an error. They were observers waiting to see if the error was actually an upgrade. I was not a bug. I was a feature that hadn't been activated yet. I went to the campus quadrangle at sunset and stood where the watchers could see me. They were there, as always, positioned at the edges like pieces on a board. I held up the letter. I spoke aloud, clearly, knowing I probably looked insane to anyone passing by. I said, "I see the grid. I'm not afraid of it. I want to know what's on the other side." The world stuttered again, but this time it didn't resume normally. The stutter extended, stretched, and in the frozen moment between one frame of reality and the next, the grid became visible. Not on a computer screen, in the air, in the ground, in the sky and the buildings and the frozen figures of people who had never known they were rendered. The lattice structure of the simulation blazed with light, and through the gaps in the grid I could see something beyond it. Not darkness, not another reality. Light. Pure, structured, intentional light, the kind that carries information, the kind that suggests that whatever built this simulation did not build a prison. It built a cocoon, and something on the other side was waiting for whatever was growing inside it to finally open its eyes. The watchers smiled, all of them, simultaneously, and the grid began to open.